Now, we've got so much with this regime. IRS has just said churches can endorse political candidates. Kristin, when you saw that news, did you just roll your eyes? like,
You know, I was not at all surprised, right? And I honestly had a hard time taking interviews on this particular issue because, in part, I thought it's not being observed by so many churches already as it is, and it would not be enforced anyway during this presidency. So while yes, it is not a good sign, and while, as a Christian, I do not want my pastors endorsing political candidates from the pulpit, even if I share their political views. I guess on this particular issue, I just thought, yes, of course, this is where we're at, and we should expect to see much more of this more overtly. And part of me is, and this is probably a mistake, and I'll probably be proven wrong here. I prefer to have things out in the open. And so, I've had to explain for years to journalists how these endorsements actually work. When they, claim not to be endorsing a candidate, they claim not to be talking politics at all in these spaces. And yet, here we are. And I thought one really important work is a book written several years ago by Lydia Bean, a sociologist. I believe she's a sociologist or anthropologist, and she did a comparative analysis of two evangelical churches, one in Canada and one in the United States, just across the border, and gave a really beautiful description of how, when you would ask members of these churches, it'd be like, no, my pastor is not political. No, not at all. And yet, when she was embedded there, she saw all kinds of politics, particularly on the American side, right? That was just part of the air they breathe. And yes, they were promoting candidates and they were promoting issues and all of these things quite overtly, even though there was this kind of, plausible or implausible deniability. So again, part of me is like, let's just not pretend anymore, and let's be very clear who is saying what and to what ends, and then, hold folks accountable.
Diana, did you see that news and how did you react?
My response was, so much for all of our care about the Johnson Amendment last year.
Right. We are so careful.
I
actually had a journalist who covered our Faith and Democracy tour reach out to me and screenshot from the article he had written, where he quotes you and me, Diana, talking about how careful we were and how we respected that, and we weren't preaching. We were just part of a nonprofit, and respecting the law and the intent of the law.
Yeah, so just to fill it in for folks, we did our first and only so far Convocation Unscripted tour, and in the funding for it, we were so careful as a nonprofit not to mention political candidates in the sense of endorsing them. And so there was a ton that we left unsaid because we wanted to follow the Johnson Amendment. And turns out we were far more scrupulous than a lot of pastors or church leaders have been on that topic. And my concern is twofold. One, the financial aspect, where these churches can essentially become unregulated political action committees. So they can accept and even solicit donations. And these tax exempt nonprofits don't have the same reporting requirements. So they don't have to disclose who or how much. So you can have all this sort of shadow funding. And along with that, you have churches in the pockets of particular politicians with whom they want to curry favor and all of that stuff, right? It reminds me of the money changers and Jesus flipping tables, right? That similar dynamic. The other part that concerns me is that left or liberal leaning church leaders would take the bait and say, well, now that it's allowed, I'll start endorsing candidates who are clearly better than what the other side is putting forward. And my encouragement is not to take the bait, because it is not the quote I used was from Martin Luther King Jr., which says the church isn't the servant or the master of the state, but the conscience of the state. And I said we need to have a sort of prophetic distance from political candidates and partisanship in order to have the perspective to be the conscience of the state. If the far right has been doing this, and even some left-leaning churches have been doing this, but I would advise church leaders that not everything that is lawful is wise.
The other piece of that, of course, is if people did participate in that from the left, it would be very interesting to see how long it would hold.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might be perceived, say, for example, in a small town, you have one candidate running on an overtly Christian nationalist platform, and you have one running, say, on a platform of full inclusion or something like that. And you're the Presbyterian minister, you get up and you say, no, we don't support Christian nationalism. See, that could actually be perceived as an attack on Christianity. Mm-hmm. And so the anti-Christian discrimination task force, whatever that thing is, the attack could come from somewhere else beside the IRS. And you could still run afoul of, I think, legal entities and the Trump administration, even if you were saying, hey, the IRS says this is legal now, but they'd find some other law you broke. And so I would be a little concerned about that.
I think too, to build on what you were saying, Jemar, the separation of church and state is in large part to protect churches, right? Mm-hmm. To protect the integrity of churches, to protect churches from being coerced by the state, by other churches that curry favor with the state. And I fear that is being lost entirely because people have been blinded by power. And the more they see that power is for sale and that they can grab it, it's the classic temptation of, wanting power instead of trusting God and taking up your cross and doing what is right. And, watching it all play out so vividly, almost in kind of caricature form, is just stunning. It's like, didn't we read all those Bible stories? Like, there's a lot of words about what we're living through right now, and a lot of warnings. And, how is it that, one of the things I wrote about this week on Substack was Mike Johnson celebrating the passage of the, big, beautiful bill and the House reconciliation with a Bible verse about the ministry of reconciliation. I completely.
Oh, yeah, that was terrible.
What did he say? Oh, soli Deo Gloria, to God alone be the glory. And then he has this quote, all this is from God, all caps, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. I mean, come on, Christians.
Like, as in reconciliation bill?
Yeah. Yeah. It was to celebrate the reconciliation bill. Like, first of all, stupid. And second of all, where's the Christian outrage? Of course, it's not coming right for this, for the abuse of God's word, for taking God's name in vain like this. And then
who called us heretics.
Right. We're the heretics.
We're the heretics.
So that was bad enough, right? I was like, okay, I got to write on this. And I was borrowing some of the insights from Emily Snook, who's new to Substack. And she had this beautiful piece on it too, having grown up Southern Baptist, having grown up in that tradition, and said, this is not what I was taught. I took this seriously. You said, respect the authority of the scriptures. And this is what it looked like. And this is not what you all are doing. So I was already like writing that piece. I just had to, final edits, wrap it up. And then Homeland Security puts
Mm.
out this piece of propaganda
Yep.
uh, uh, with another Bible verse on it. Here am I, send me.
Mm.
And God spoke to me, and this, biblical text, again, ripped entirely out of context. And the backdrop we have are border patrol officers armed and with presumably immigrants in their sights and night vision, and this militarization. And then there is a song playing in the background, which is sooner or later God will cut you down.
Good
Like,
Lord.
my goodness, right? This is that conflation that we're talking about. This is not healthy, to say the least. Understatement here. Not healthy for faith, for Christianity. It is distorting, and it is just unrestrained right now.
Robbie would be pulling out his hair listening to this if we didn't mention that the Public Religion Research Institute did polling on this. And it said 75% of Americans oppose allowing churches and places of worship to endorse political candidates while retaining their tax-exempt status. That was 2023. And it says public opinion has remained largely unchanged over time, 71% opposed in 2017. And as always, findings show that Republicans, white evangelical Protestants, and Christian nationalism adherents and sympathizers are the most likely to favor endorsing political candidates in places of worship. So, Robbie, that one's for you.